That's some good oxygen right there. Tell you what. Man, trying to get up into cool places on Vancouver Island it's pretty gross. Whoever made a deal years ago, how they even thought they could have made a deal, but they apparently sold all of the timber on the island to a private company. So there's gates literally everywhere. You can't go anywhere. It's absolutely embarrassing and gross and disgusting, I'll tell you what. And I don't give a shit what anybody says. That is not right. It's almost enough to make a person move, for me. I mean, this is just ridiculous. You guys know all the places I would go with the camera before I moved here. I go anywhere. Anywhere, forever. Miles. Up into those beautiful coastal mountains in the southern interior of British Columbia. Everywhere. Everywhere and anywhere at all times. People still were logging. You know? Everything's just going as smooth as can be. And then you come to Vancouver Island, which is an absolute embarrassment when it comes to the real world out here. There's my rant. I'll bite my lip there, but it's pretty gross, I'll tell you what. It's pretty gross, shameful, embarrassing. Private land. Unbelievable. Now, what do we got? We got lots. Oh boy, where to start? Holy cow. Well, maybe I'll try to take it off the top. Some new ones. I got too much to do at home, so I couldn't go off on my mega road trip towards the coast to go steelhead fishing and hiking, so that'll probably be tomorrow maybe. There's too many other things to do. But anyway, I had to get out. I had to get off the property and try to get somewhere in the real world and have a sit down and a breather and show some sights. It wasn't easy. It's titled WTF. Hi Steve, please do not share my full name. You can call me Joe. I'm a father, grandfather, hunter, fisherman, pilot, software engineer, musician, entrepreneur, and USAF veteran. Except for my military service, I lived my entire life in eastern Ohio. I'll be 70 years old shortly. I started watching your original channel a few years ago because of the outdoor content. Keep up the great work. There is value in what you're doing. Okay, man, thanks for the kind words. What the F, number one. In the late 70s, I took my 5-year-old son grouse hunting at Beaver Creek State Park. There was an abundance of grouse at the time. There's a small grove of hemlocks just outside the park. A creek ran through it, and it always held birds. I had permission from the farmer, and on a recent hunting trip, I found a dead 8-point whitetail in the grove. I knew my son would find that interesting to see. We parked the car around noon and started the 100-yard walk to the hemlocks. About 7 yards into the knee-high grass field, something growled at us. The growl was huge, and it seemed to pierce and envelop me. I grabbed my son's collar and froze mid-step. I had Ithaca Model 37 12 gauge, loaded with 7.5 bird shot. Not good for anything large, and I was concerned. I scanned the edge of the forest for a few seconds to see what was growling and saw nothing. The silence was deafening, and I know what a growl means. So I told my son that we were going to go hunt a better place. I didn't want to scare him. We walked out the same way we walked in. Good move. I continued to look over my shoulder on the way out and thankfully saw nothing. I never returned to the hemlock grove. And there you go, you guys. That's how much of an impact that sound can be on your average human. Never going back just because of a sound. That's pretty frickin' substantial, right? What the F, number two. In the late 90s, my wife and I were ending a motorcycle ride with 2 other couples around midnight. We were southbound on Route 7, a rural 2-lane state highway. We were descending a long straight hill with 1 to 2 miles of clear visibility. We could see something in our lane ahead, which at first looked like a pile of dirt. My wife and I were the last in the line of the 3 bikes. As we approached the obstacle, the other 2 bikes avoided it by slowing down, crossing the yellow line and steering to the northbound lane to avoid it. No problem, no traffic. As I was doing the same, I glanced to my right to see what it was, and I was surprised to see hair. about 6 inches long, moving in the light breeze, and it appeared to be 10 feet long and 3 feet high at the highest point and completely black. It was huge. A bear? No. I've seen black bears at checking stations in Pennsylvania during the bear season. This was way too large, and it had long hair. Black bears have fur, not the same. There's no blood, no vehicle parts on the road, no skid marks, and it was lying longwise, perfectly in the center of the lane. It's an odd place to take a breather, isn't it? Curiosity made me want to stop and see what it was. It was big. I was wondering whether or not it was dead. If we stopped and wound up with a big angry critter in close proximity, things could get bad quickly. I did have a small .380 pistol, but I did not stop. About an hour later, on our way back home, my wife and I traveled the same route, and I was curious to see if the road crews had cleaned things up or if the obstruction was still there. Surprisingly, there was no evidence that anything had happened. There was no blood, no vehicle parts or fluids on the road, no skid marks, nothing in the center of the lane. In the decades that followed, that night was never mentioned again by my buddies or my wife. WTF number 3. You'll be unable to solve your puzzle by isolating its pieces categorically. History, Sasquatch, UFOs, religion, politics, medicine, etc. There's a common theme in all these. We are lied to about all of them. Yes, we are. Since the, quote, picture, end quote, agenda is unknown, trying to solve the puzzle by isolating pieces will create confusion and a distorted perception of those pieces. In isolation, puzzle pieces cannot make sense if the picture is not part of your perceived reality. These lies of the establishment have a common agenda. Their motivation is unimaginable to us because of our conditioned perception of reality. Our perception of reality is false for this reason. Most people cannot accept the truth, and the establishment will never reveal it anyway. Anyone able to discover and reveal the truth publicly will be discredited and not believed, or worse. Isn't that a fact? Anyone able to discover and reveal the truth publicly will be discredited and not believed, or worse. Plato's Republic describes this perfectly in, quote, The Cave, end quote. A short and necessary read for truth seekers. It was written in 375 BCE and as relevant today as the day it was written. Quote, truth is stranger than fiction, but it is because fiction is obligated to stick it to possibilities. Truth isn't. Mark Twain. Thank you for your valiant efforts, Joe. Joe, we're on the same page, my man. We're on the same page. Appreciate you writing in and sharing that. And to the Sasquatch part of it, I remember reading an account a long time ago, but it struck home with me. I just took note of it. It's funny how as I go through life, I take notes of certain sentences said to me or things that wise people have said to me in a sentence or two years ago, and I can still hear those words today and all through my lifetime. I carry them with me. I don't know why, but I have. But I remember reading one of some people driving down their rural road, coming into the front opening where the property opened up, and noted a huge pile of leaves on the right hand side as they drove by it in the darkness. Kind of the headlights grazed it, and then once they got to the house, realized there's no big pile of leaves back there. They turned around, went back, and it was gone. So you got to think. I mean, I've done it. I don't know how many times I've done it hunting, or coming out of one of my hunting spots, because I'm usually parked a long ways away from where I don't want anybody to know where I'm hunting, right? Some places in your home where people know my truck and they chase my spots down because they know I'm after something. They know it's probably going to be a good spot. They chase the truck. So what I do is I park a long ways from where I want to go, and then I will have to hike back in broad daylight. And it's so easy. It's ridiculous, especially along the road. I'll either go just inside the timber or beside a stump, duck down, cover my head in my flesh color. Don't move. 100% of everybody goes right by you. They don't even notice what you are. And meanwhile, 3/4 of your body is wide open to them. Camouflage clothing, but it still doesn't really matter too much. As long as you're not making that outline and you've broken up your silhouette and you're curled up with the color of flesh hidden, I don't think I've had a human being see me yet. And believe me, I've buckled over, remained frozen as somebody drove by or biked by or hiked by I don't know how many times. So that thing laying in the road Obviously somewhat good camo, but what a ridiculous place to lay down in the middle of a freaking road, right? Unless they just got here. Yeah, and then that one where the thing buckled over. I mean, you imagine being covered in hair, go with the rainy forest, you're going to have shit hanging off you all over the place, so it'd be easy to blend in. So, how hard would it be to make yourself look like a pile of dirt or leaves in the darkness on the side of the road? It'd be pretty easy, right? But laying down in the middle of the road, that's odd. That's very odd unless somebody just got here for the first time and they weren't really up to speed at what they should be doing or where they should be going, right? Somebody probably said, hey, the humans are blind as shit, just lay down and don't move and they'll go right by you. So he said, okay, I guess I better lay down, somebody's coming, right in the middle of the road, and it still worked, right? Still worked. Not the first time somebody's reported seeing one of these suckers laying or squatted on the road or sitting on the road. It's bizarre, man. Is this a huge rant? Alright, nope, this is unrelated. Alright. Maybe for another channel another time, but not for today on this video. Alright, this is titled, red now. This is titled, Little People, Snow Footprints in Germany. Germany's come up a handful of times lately, as it should. Hey Steve, I've followed you from the start on this topic. A few years ago, I wanted to congratulate you to make this platform so successful. Thanks for that, but you got to give it all to everybody here, right? I was unsure when you shared your plans first online. Yes, I have to admit your way of helping people works out very well. Keep doing it. Get a good exit plan if ever needed, and stay safe. You asked about more information about little people, so here we go. Yeah, I'm all over it. As intro, I am a nuclear physicist and chief level executive, hence not ready to share my name. Yeah, no doubt. You scientists seem to get knocked off non-stop globally, right? And I know that you guys, you nuclear physicist scientists, are a tight-knit group, and you know a lot of people that I am familiar with and am connected to. Guaranteed. My scientific education made me consider Sasquatch not to be even a far-stretched possibility over 40 years of my life in Europe. Yet, having moved to the U.S. some years ago, the topic caught my interest, and I have meanwhile myself found various footprints in the San Francisco Bay Area, Lake Tahoe, Mendocino Forest, and Klamath National Forest. The bigger surprise yet was to find small barefoot prints back in Germany. So close to Stuttgart on a Sunday morning in the forest after nightly 1-inch snowfall. I lived in that area for more than 18 years and was completely shocked as I thought there was nothing unknown in the few small forest areas of Germany, the most scary animals being foxes and squirrels. Yet on Sunday morning in winter 2019, a few kilometers southwest of Stuttgart Airport, I went for a hike in the forest close to Ulbergtum, Ulbergtum, ruins at freezing outside temperatures. Since it had snowed only the night before, the footprints in the link video must have been created that night. As you can see, the bare feet are small, show toes, small stride length of about 1 foot, and look bipedal to me. The prints I followed went through the forest for at least 150 meters. Not on trails, but straight through the forest. Alright, I'll have to, hopefully this video works out when I get back. Only explanation to me is that there are some kind of small people in Germany's forest. Unbelievable. Toddlers don't do that stuff in Germany. Most Europeans still shake their heads in disbelief about North American craziness, from putting dogs in microwaves, flat earthing, voting for Trump, to Bigfoot and UFOs. Any more questions on physics, nuclear, electrodynamics, optics stuff, don't hesitate to reach out. I am puzzling, pun intended, all technical information together from your videos about infrared, infrasound, electronics behavior, battery discharges, portals, and nuclear sites. Definitely what is taught in today's physics at universities, from electrodynamics to quantum dynamics to Einstein, does not cover what the forests have for us. On a side note, A friend has lived in Squamish for years, but can't relate to Sasquatch at all. He moved to Victoria Island recently. That'll be Vancouver Island. And I'm looking forward to him changing his views. Cheers. Yeah, some people get it and some don't. Many don't. You could probably take a Sasquatch and slap somebody in the side of the head with his hand, and they probably would still shrug it off and not want to acknowledge it. Happens all the time. Thanks for sending that in. I'm surprised you haven't seen one yet. At one of, I don't know where you work or if you've worked at the nuclear plants at all in the past. I would imagine you must have, because from what I gather from their scientists, the majority of them have seen these things, these forest people, these beings, just standing there blatant inside the security zone, staring up at the security camera at them. Some, quote, from another nuclear scientist said, quote, hundreds of times. So, you might want to ask around a little more in that community and see what they got, right? Because that's substantial. Appreciate your email. I hope this video works out. If it will, obviously I'm going to include it. But I'm going to have to crack up my inbox to find that link and download it on the computer and get it in. Can't wait to see it. Alright, what's this one? This is titled, it's titled Red now. No subject, no title. Hi Steve, my name is Tamika. I listen to your channel here and there with my husband, who has emailed you some of his stories. So, I figured I'd have a couple of experiences with Sasquatch I want to share with you. I didn't really believe they existed until July of 2019, when my husband and I first got together. I was driving back to my husband's place from visiting close friends one night, and I was going around a sharp corner on the road with my high beams when I noticed someone on the side of the road crouching down and stood up as I was about to pass it. It was tall, black hair from head to toe and broad shoulders. I never got to get a clear look at the face, but I knew it was a Sasquatch. Put my car in a second gear and blazed down the road and slowed down for 2 kilometers. My second experience was December 2019. I was getting home from working night shift at the store and was on our back porch getting snow for my hands since they were red and sore from disinfecting everything at work. It was right after the flu that shall not be named first happened, so I made sure everything at work was sanitized. Anyways, when I was almost done getting the snow, I heard something howling from behind the mountain that's behind our place. I immediately froze to listen to what it could be, because I never heard anything like it before, and felt my eyes get super wide. Once I snapped back to reality, I threw the bowl into the snow and ran inside. Darn near jumped into my husband's arms. I was so spooked. When he asked me what was wrong, I told him to howl like the Sasquatch he heard years ago, and when he did, it gave me chills because it hit the head right on the nail. And I told him that's what I heard outside. So he went outside to listen, but it stopped before he got to hear it. So now, I 110% believe they are real. Thank you for sharing my story on your channel. No problem, thanks for writing it in. Yeah, I guess you got no choice, right? You've seen one. Welcome to the club of no return. It's a big one. It's a monster. A monster club. Monstrous club. It's titled 2 Strange Experiences. Hi Steve, hope all is well with you today. Share this if you want. But I do think leaving out the name and any indication of address on my part is wise. I don't want any harm to come to anybody because of me. Back in the 60s, we lived on the remote edge of a pretty wild wilderness preserve, as it's officially called, in the northeastern U.S. My husband was a over-the-road trucker and seldom home. In those days, there was no TV available. Oh, lucky you. Not even radio reception where we lived. Life was quiet. We never heard anything about any Bigfoot or Sasquatch. Late, one cold night, I was totally involved in the Hemingway book I was reading by the wood stove. My little baby in her basket next to me and the dog curled up asleep at my feet. Suddenly, the front door exploded open, and what my eyes saw was a big, dark, hairy thing filling the doorway. Oh my God, that would suck. The dog, snarling, leapt up at whatever it was. Then just as suddenly, what it was wasn't there. It had just gone. The dog skulked back into the room, and I thought I just imagined the whatever. That's pretty crazy. The next morning I went to town and asked several people if we'd had a rogue wind last night, or a mini tornado in the mountains. Everyone said it had been an uneventful, quiet night. Not for me. I put it away thinking I'd let my imagination see that big, hairy, dark thing. I only told my best friend, and we never spoke of it again. But I never forgot it. Not for all these long 60 years. And I admit it, I was real glad my husband got another job and we moved away from that creepy place. We're now about 100 miles south of that old house, but it so happens the very same piece of wilderness preserve extends all the way down this far, which I sadly just recently realized. And that, because of the second experience, I'll put that one on a fresh email. If it weren't for your video, Steve, I wouldn't have put this together and... Sorry. If it weren't for your video, Steve, I wouldn't have put this together and settled the puzzle. I'm sure now what exploded the door open that night, but I never spoke about it to anyone except the one friend until your videos began. But not to people I know. It never made any sense until you opened this mystery up. I still don't understand the why of it, but now realize they don't need reason for anything. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for sending that in. That's a frickin' terrifying one. If you close your eyes and picture you being there and experiencing that, and it's too bad you didn't put your next one with this. But make sure you email it. Don't forget. Email it in, alright? We want to hear what you learned. Poof, they're there. Poof, they're gone. That's a pattern. That's a very, very popular pattern. A pattern that the majority of the old so-called big names ignored and refused to share with you when they were told. We've been told these patterns. We've been told these points, these facts, how many times? Thousands now? How many times have those people who were so-called big names in the Bigfoot Sasquatch community, how many times were they told these details and they shunned it every single time, and why? Why? Right? Not only why are we lied to, why did these other people keep all that shit hush-hush and quiet from all of you? Right? It's the questions like that you need answered to help put the puzzle pieces together. Why? Why the lies? Why the bullshit? Why the suppression of the voices? Why? This is titled My Story, Southeastern Kentucky. Hey Steve, I wish to remain anonymous, so please don't mention my full name, but you can call me Dan. I'm a young guy, 18 years old, and last summer in August I encountered this. I'm from a very rural area located in the Appalachian Mountains in southeastern Kentucky. There aren't many people here. There's less than 2,000 people that live in my area, so it's a big contrast to many areas. The nature here is beautiful, and I really enjoy going outside and going for walks or fishing. On occasion, my family and I would visit my grandpa. He lives in a very mountainous region not far from us. The mountains stretch as far as the eye can see, and it's very inhabited compared to where my family lives. Once you go up the mountain, there's nothing but forests and more mountains. My grandfather only has one neighbor, and they live close to each other. So as you can imagine, there's very little human contact. One of those days, visiting changed my life forever. I never particularly believed in Bigfoot, nor did I heavily research the subject. I was outside before the encounter took place. I was alone while my family was inside of my grandfather's house. I was quite far away from the house, as I wanted to take in the beautiful scenery. As I was sitting, I heard a rock that was thrown into a boulder that was next to me. This scared me badly, and I assumed it was someone trying to mess around with me. I got up and looked into the brush. I didn't see anything, so I went deeper into the forest. I had a large hunting knife, and I had my hand on it in case something happened. I shouted into the woods and said, "Whoever's doing this needs to stop." I walked back over to the spot that I was sitting at. I was planning to make campfire and cook some hot dogs and marshmallows. This is during sunset, and I shrugged off the incident like it was nothing. Around 15 minutes later of the initial incident, I began hearing knocking on the trees and a loud whooping noise. I figured the whooping noise is a pack of coyotes, as they give many locals here issues. And this is when I saw the creature. It was at least 8 foot, extremely muscular legs and arms, a huge barrel chest, and a conical shaped head. Medium to long black hair all over its body besides its face. The hair looked matted in some areas as if it was sitting in mud. Its face didn't look like an ape, as many people might think, but its face looked human. Let me read that one more time in case you're missing that point or you're ignoring it. Its face didn't look like an ape, as many people might think, but its face looked human. Got it? Don't forget it. I could see the large and robust shoulders and arms of the creature. Its arms were very long and muscular, and its thighs looked like a bodybuilder's. The skin was dark gray and ashy. I seen it after glancing over at the forest. It was curiously peeking at me from not far away behind a tree. It then stepped out of the brush, exposing itself. Car coming. Now somebody on a side-by-side burning around. When I saw the creature, my heart dropped, and I could feel myself turning pale white from fear. It was less than 20 feet away. That's way too close. And too close for my liking. It wasn't aggressive, but rather very curious. However, it knew about my presence. We both stood and looked at each other. I was in complete shock and I couldn't move. After coming back to my senses, I ran away, leaving behind my knife and my food. I was completely disoriented and not believing what I just saw. I will never visit the wilderness the same anymore. I never thought that these creatures existed until that day. The fear of how human-like these creatures are creeps me out when seeing its face. I never told my family, and I stayed up all night that night. To this day, I still haven't told anyone. I know people would say that I'm crazy, or rather try to convince me that it was a black bear. It wasn't a black bear. It looked like a large and hairy human. Sorry for the long email. I need to get this off my chest. I really like this channel. I've been watching since January. Keep up the good work. Okay, man. Appreciate you. Welcome to the club. You just lived through possibly everybody's worst frickin' nightmare, including mine. I mean, like I've always said, when that dude was up on that rock, like right there, squatting down looking at me, it was the silhouette, so I couldn't see his face. I think seeing the face would have way more of an impact, right? Because then it doesn't leave you that confused. You've seen its eyes. You know what I mean? When you the people that get to see that face 20 feet away, dude, holy shit, right? That's going to be absolutely laser burned into your eyeballs and memory forever. I'll guarantee you there's not too many days go by where you don't see that scene and you play it back in your head, right? You play it back all the time. I'll guarantee you, every time you go for a drive and you go on by a patch of forest or in the mountains or rural and highway, you're looking for them because you know they're out there, right? You know what I'm talking about. And face to face, 20 feet away, looking into the face. And how many people has that experience alone absolutely annihilated their passion for the outdoors, stripped their freedom from them? They can't just go cruising off to the timber again. Lots of people anyway, not everybody. I still do it. And then again, I wonder if I still would have done it if I'd have been face to face when I was 18 years old instead of just seeing the silhouette right there. I wonder what kind of an impact that would have had on me then, right? Because there's always that little chunk of confusion that's going to haunt the shit out of you until your grandfather decides to tell you about his broad daylight face-to-face and confirms to you what you saw, and from there on in it's very real. And then you got to work on dealing with it for the rest of your life. And later on in life, when you're a grown adult and you've logged miles and miles and miles and miles of being in remote areas, and you still have to talk yourself through leaving the truck in the dark to hike up that mountain in the timber to go hunting by yourself. You still got to talk yourself through it, right? It's crazy. Here comes the side-by-side again. All right, next up. Mark this is red. It's titled 9/11 Sighting. If you choose to read, please don't use my name, forgive me. I'm a professional firefighter in a city in Massachusetts for 26 years now. Whenever I'm off duty, I spend as much time with my wife and kids as possible. Often, especially with the missus, we walk and hike in the woods. I spent most of my life in the trails and small mountains in the area. The trail I'm referring to today, we know very well. There are 2 large ponds and marshy areas right among us, and some interesting boulder formations. Also, there are interesting double crosses from bent and broken trees, at least 5 years old, laid out on the ground near one of these boulder areas. There's also other oddities, like a hollow in a tree 9 to 10 feet high with a stone stack inside, as well as other interesting finds. We walk and take note of our surroundings, but don't pursue anything unusual. In, I believe, late March, maybe early April of this year, at mid-morning, the wife and I were hiking said trail, and maybe 1,000 feet in from the road, we heard in the heavy woods a knock, very loud, like a baseball bat swinging at the tree. Honestly, I chalked it up as someone in the woods, a homeless person or kids. Not another sound was made, and although teenagers make their way in here at a party, it's an odd time of day for that. Fast forward to today, September 11th, 2020. I was supposed to be at work, but considering we will have had a memorial for the fallen, I chose to opt out. I wrote my feelings why and included them below. Since I was blessed to be with my wife today, we chose to go for another hike down this trail. On my return, my wife was startled to see a man, 8 to 9 feet tall, very broad, looking at us on the left edge of the trail, and he was beige in color all over. Where this, quote, man, end quote, stood was at the edge of a 4-foot-high wild grape bush at the side of the trail, and it was moving wildly. So after she made sight of him, he disappeared instantly. I never saw him, though I saw the bush shaking intensely. There was wind at the treetops, 10 to 15 miles per hour, rain last night, but such good cover on the ground, so no breeze or movement. We had 0 breeze. You could see the ferns were disturbed near the grape bush, and a few feet past the ferns alongside the trail had green stems snapped. After a couple of minutes, the bush became and remained still. We did hear insects, however, no birds, which is unusual. We stood and listened for a couple of minutes and heard coos or whoos and some sort of gibber. A few moments later, some howling like a monkey, not directed at us, we feel. We did not feel any danger, but paid attention as we made an exit. We recorded these sounds, which are not the normal crows, woodpeckers, or other typical noises in these woods. Honestly, they are hard to hear on the phone and don't sound like much, but are not the normal. As we continued, bird sounds soon reappeared maybe 1/8 of a mile down, and they again later disappeared, and whoos were heard again on the same side. We made our way up by the street. All the normal loud bird noises were again back. I wrote a piece on 9/11 and placed it below. It was a small piece on 9/11 and placed it below. If you have any interest, and kept it clean as if I was unable to get the day off, it would have been on me likely to lead the ceremony. It would have been on me likely to lead the ceremony. Perhaps almost all people that are around 35 years old and older remember exactly where you were and exactly what you were doing 19 years ago. 343 firefighters' lives lost. Firefighters going into a hell, saving someone who cannot get out. Almost 3,000 dead. Many more died living shorter lives. Sacrifices made, honor due, integrity established, all through suffering. For what I'm going to say, you may be offended, and if so, no apology is due. Using my own self, what I've experienced and am experiencing, you take time today, consider what is right and what is wrong. On the morning of September 11th, 2001, I was a firefighter for just 7 years, near to the day. A few towns north of New York City, I sat enjoying a cup of coffee on the Hudson River. On the far side is the railroad and very well-kept properties. Behind me, the beautiful Catskill Mountains can be seen, a gorgeous spot, thank God. As I sat there on the edge of the Hudson, I watched a commercial airliner flying level, riding the river. The height of said plane was extremely low, at best only a couple hundred feet above the water. Watching this, the only reasonable conclusion one would make is that the plane has to land in the Hudson, somewhere further down. Look and listen. Nothing is seen nor heard. Shortly afterwards, I hiked out of the area that I was in and drove into town. On arriving, people are seen gathered, watching televisions. I made a path towards seeing the breaking news as well. The plane that I watched a short time before had just hit one of the twin towers. I stood unable to process the news as the video clip was being replayed over and over. Then, as I stood there, I observed another plane fly into the other tower as it happened. I can clearly recall the sick feeling in my gut. From that act of war, Americans came together and stood for what is right. Today, too, I have a sick feeling, and this feeling worsens and remains. We Americans, U.S., are either apathetic or cowards, as other so-called Americans are encouraging and celebrating what is happening coast to coast. Eyes that can see and ears hear. Today we are living through many attacks of many types, but our lack of action, the end will now be much worse than the days, months, and years following 9/11. If my grandfather, who witnessed the original flag at Iwo Jima be erected where I live today, were alive today, he would be as disgusted to be an American on September 11, 2020. Thank you for what you do. God be with you. Name for you only, please. Okay, man, I got you. And I absolutely get it, and I'm on the exact same page. I don't need to say too much on that one. You said it all, man, and quite clearly, and I am sharing it. Take from it what you will or leave it, right? But I suggest listening to this man. Appreciate you. Big time. Yeah. Let that sink in a little bit for everybody, right? Should probably close after that one, but I'll share one more. This is titled Club Member from Oregon. In late August 2019, I was up there at this one great spot on a cliff overlooking part of the lake. The mountain continues up behind it, with a gravel road between the camp and the mountain. Now, I had a few beers and was enjoying a nice little campfire in the dark of the night when I heard some large-sounding birds up the mountain, probably about 50 yards away. As I've mentioned, I have been going into the woods my whole life, and I have not heard birds at night. These were not owls. They sounded like crow. There were 3 or 4 of them, either in the trees or on the steep mountain just behind the trees. I pointed my flashlight to these critters, right where the sounds were coming from, and though I couldn't make hide nor hair, they must have been on them because they got agitated, and the crowing turned to monkey sounds. I took my light off them because it was very clear they were getting angry at me. I pulled out my handgun and showed it to them in the light because I knew that these were not birds. I told them to leave me alone. I knew what they were, even though I didn't want to think about it. I was camping alone, but I was shouting distance from other campers because sound travels over water well, so I stayed 2 more days. I heard them a few times over those days. If I hadn't been drinking that night, I would have packed up and left immediately. I don't want to encounter them, but they are not going to scare me out of the wilderness. We are all going to die. I intend to live until then. If they're going to take me down, then you'll know where I was because there will be a pile of brass. I'm a God-fearing man, so I pray. Brother, you and yours and all the club members are in my prayers. I'm a free man. My name is Trevor Ballard. I do not care about the judgment of a man. They can say what they want. Cheers. There you go, man. Welcome to the club. Good for you standing up. Live your life anyway, no matter what. No matter what. Anyway. Alright. On that note, I'm out of here. Sure is important to hear the voices, right? You will not get straight up information, honesty anywhere in the world today except from the people. And that is an absolute fact. Listen to the people. Listen to the people. Anyway. Where am I? Where am I right now? If you're to travel through that valley right behind me where it's snowing, you can see the snow hitting the top there. Actually, a little bit of snow just came down, I think. Or maybe it's a bug. But it's snowing on the top of those hills. And right over the top of that hill is Nemint Lake. And that is where my mother and the other woman were in the cabin. And they heard something, quote, absolutely huge. Went walking, crashing between the cabin and the rock wall of the mountain behind the cabin. And that was right over there. It's also where there's been absolutely numerous sightings. And then on the other side of that is Kennedy Lake, where it's ridiculous with sightings. And that's the borderline of the zone right there, although there have been sightings just over this hill right here, all over the place. Hard to imagine, right? With all this forest being shaved right off like a crew cut. Everything you can see right now is all regrowth. No more big old first growth tree with lichen supporting acres of deer and other wildlife. It's all been stripped away, taken. I haven't seen one footprint of any game anywhere on this chunk of road, but anyway. By the time you're watching this, I should be waist deep in a freezing cold river, possibly battling steelhead, maybe. Maybe I'll go look for some elk. I'll snoop around. I'll share some of my voices and show you guys some more of the real world. Anyway, share my story at howtohunt.com. Make sure you get your experiences in, get your knowledge out, and get it shared, all right? Because you all are the only source of true knowledge this world has. Think about that one. You all are the only source. That's it. Right? So you got to speak out loud. You have to. You got to share the truth. Speak out loud. We'll be back again.